We should open the marriage. She said it so casually, like she was commenting on a Netflix series or asking about dinner plans. Her voice was soft, level, almost too calm. No storm in her eyes. No shame. Just an eerie, clinical detachment that made my stomach twist. I stared at her across the dinner table. Same woman. Same soft, freckled skin. Same red lipstick that once stained my collar on our anniversary. But now? Now she looked like someone I barely recognized. A stranger in my wife's body. You mean, sleep with other people? I asked, trying to keep my voice steady. She sipped her wine, swirled it, then nodded. Yes. Not fall in love, just explore. Sexually. Discreetly. Respectfully. Discreetly. Respectfully. As if those words could bandage what she was doing to me. My chest felt tight. I blinked, hoping the moment would vanish. But it stayed. It rooted in the air between us like a poisonous flower, fragrant and impossible to ignore. You're serious, I finally said. I am. There was no stutter, no second guessing. She had rehearsed this. I could see it in her posture, the confident tilt of her chin, the way her nails tapped the wine glass like she was waiting for a response. Like she had already decided. I felt like I had just been asked to sign a contract for my own slow death. Why? I asked. It came out hoarse. She didn't look away. Because we're stuck. You and me, we've been in a rut for years. You feel it too. We haven't had sex in months, and when we do, it's fine. Mechanical. You're distracted. I'm numb. I think we both want more, even if we're too afraid to admit it. It was hard to argue with that. She wasn't wrong. The passion had cooled. But wasn't that what marriage was? Seasons of fire, followed by winters of quiet love and slow rebuilding? You don't set the house on fire just because it's gotten cold. So this is your solution? I asked, opening the door for someone else to fuck you? She flinched, but not because of the word. It was because I said it with hurt. Raw and ugly. I'm not trying to hurt you, she said. I just want to feel alive again. The irony was, I had never felt more hollow in my life. I stood up, walked to the sink, and turned on the water just to do something with my hands. The silence stretched. We set rules, she said behind me. Discretion. No bringing anyone home. No telling friends or family. And it can't affect us. We still go to dinner. We still laugh. We still live. Together. My voice was quiet when I replied. Together. But not really together. She walked over, wrapped her arms around my back. Don't think of it as breaking us apart. Think of it as saving us. I wanted to laugh. Or scream. Or vomit. Maybe all three. Instead, I turned around and looked her in the eye. Her pupils were wide, her breath wine-sweet and warm. And I could see something there. Not malice. Not excitement. But resignation. Like she had already mourned the loss of us. And now she was just trying to survive it. I hated how much I still wanted her. Even now. Her smell. Her softness. Her voice when she whispered things only meant for me. The curve of her hip. The way her hair fell messily around her collarbones in the morning light. All of it, still mine. At least, for now. But something inside me broke anyway. I should have said no. Should have told her if she wanted to fuck other people, she could do it as my ex-wife. But I didn't. Because the idea of losing her, fully, completely, terrified me more than the idea of sharing her. So I nodded. Slowly. Painfully. Okay. Her lips parted. A soft breath escaped her. Really? No drama, I said. No flaunting. No lies. And no falling in love. That's the rule. She kissed me. Not passionately, but gently. Almost like she was saying goodbye to the version of me she used to love. I promise, she whispered. But a promise in an open marriage is like a fire escape in a building already in flames. Too little, too late. That night, I couldn't sleep. I lay in bed next to her, listening to her steady breathing, imagining hands that weren't mine sliding across her skin. I tried not to picture her moaning someone else's name. I tried not to wonder if she'd look at him the way she used to look at me. When I closed my eyes, I remembered the first time we had sex, how her legs trembled against my hips, how she whispered don't stop like it was oxygen. I remembered the hotel bed we'd ruined on our honeymoon. The night she wore nothing but my dress shirt and begged me to take her on the kitchen counter. Now, she was talking about seeing other people like it was a rational lifestyle choice, not the death rattle of what used to be the best thing in my life. The next morning, she made coffee like nothing had happened. She hummed, wore her robe loosely, kissed me on the cheek, and said, "Have a good day, babe." I wanted to scream. Are we even married anymore? But instead, I just nodded, took my travel mug, got in the car, and drove to work with a knot in my gut and a marriage that now had an asterisk. That night, I downloaded Tinder. She was in the shower, humming again, while I stared at the profile creation screen like it was a loaded gun. It felt wrong. Foreign. But if she was going to play this game, I wasn't going to be the only one left on the bench. I had no idea what I was doing. All I knew was this. Our marriage wasn't open. It was broken. And the worst part? I'd just agreed to help her break it. I sat on the couch one evening with the TV flickering in front of me, a beer in hand, and my phone burning a hole in my palm. The Tinder app was open, profiles scrolling by with the same rhythm as the static laugh track on the sitcom playing in the background. Blonde. Yoga instructor. Swipe. Redhead with a husky. Swipe. A girl in lingerie pouting at the camera. Swipe. I wasn't even sure what I was looking for. Certainly not love. Not a connection. Maybe just proof that someone still found me attractive. Maybe I just wanted to know I still could. My matches were pitiful at first. A few bots. A few fake-looking women asking for cash apps. Some actual human beings who ghosted after one message. I went on a date with a woman named Cassie who talked more to the waiter than to me. Another, Melanie, who started crying halfway through the second drink because her ex had slept with her roommate. Each time I came home, I felt like less of a man. The dates weren't sexy, they were sad. Empty. I'd peel off my jacket, set my keys down, and hear my wife laughing in the bedroom on a FaceTime call with someone else. I knew it wasn't her mom. Sometimes she'd come out in a robe, cheeks flushed, and pour herself a second glass of wine. We barely spoke. Just nods. Half smiles. Ghosts of what we used to be. I hated that I noticed how good she looked again. She had started dressing differently, more daring, lower cuts, tighter pants. She started wearing perfume again. The same one she wore in college when I used to bury my face in her neck and lose hours just tasting her skin. Now, the scent followed her when she walked past me to grab her keys for drinks with friends. It wasn't friends. I wasn't stupid, but I said nothing. And that silence was killing me. Then came her sister, Emily. She showed up one Sunday afternoon while I was trimming the hedge in the front yard. She parked her little blue Mini across the street, stepped out in yoga pants and a cropped hoodie, and tossed me a bottle of water like we were still cool. "I heard you're back on the market," she said, teasing. I chuckled dryly. "I guess that's what it's called. Any luck?" I hesitated. You ever scroll through Tinder and feel like the entire human race should be exiled to Mars? She laughed, then walked over and leaned against the porch railing. Her eyes danced with mischief. Emily had always had that thing about her, a sharp tongue, a wicked sense of humor. Where my wife was composed and polished, Emily was wild in a way that felt dangerous in doses. "I take it you're not enjoying the open marriage experiment." I didn't answer that. She raised an eyebrow. "You're allowed to say it sucks, you know. She might be my sister, but that doesn't mean I think she's right." That surprised me. I looked at her, unsure how far I could go without crossing lines that were barely defined anymore. "I didn't want this," I said quietly. "I just didn't want to lose her." Emily tilted her head. "You think you haven't already?" The words hit me harder than I expected. We didn't speak much after that, but she stuck around, helped me clean out the garage, joked about my taste in music, teased me about the dismal state of my dating life. As she climbed up on a stool to help me reorganize the top shelf, her shirt lifted just a bit, not enough to be indecent, but enough to send a jolt through my stomach. Her bare waist, smooth and golden. The flash of a tattoo I hadn't seen before. A thin line of skin that felt like an invitation I wasn't supposed to accept. She caught me looking, smirked, said nothing. The next day, she texted me a meme, something stupid, some joke about modern dating and disappointment. I replied with a laughing emoji. Then she sent another. Then a joke about my haircut. Then a gif of a man failing miserably on a first date. Soon, we were talking every night. It started as friendly, a weird alliance born from shared proximity and frustration. But the tone shifted slowly, like a pot left on the stove, warming 1 degree at a time. Sarcasm gave way to subtle flirting. Flirting became private jokes. Jokes became confessions. She told me how she always felt like the second choice, the fun one, the hot mess, never the one anyone took seriously. I told her how lonely I felt, even when I was sitting in the same room as my wife. She called her sister robotic, said she'd become more focused on her reflection than her relationships. She's a control freak, Emily said once. Always has been. I don't know how you put up with it. She wasn't always like this. Neither were you. That stung. Because she was right. Somewhere along the way, I stopped being the guy who made my wife moan into the pillows. Stopped being the guy who sent her dirty texts at work. Now I was the man who measured intimacy by how many minutes she looked up from her phone at dinner. Emily started showing up more often. Sometimes she brought groceries, just because. Sometimes she dropped off lunch. Once, she stopped by with a six-pack and said, "You look like shit. Let's drink." She sat on the couch, one leg tucked beneath her, sipping beer and watching reruns with me like it was the most natural thing in the world. Her eyes would drift toward me during the quiet moments. She never pulled away when we touched, never flinched when our knees brushed, or when I lingered too long looking at her mouth. I told myself it was innocent, that we were just two people leaning on each other. But one night, she walked past me in shorts so short I had to clench my jaw. She turned, caught my stare, and said, "You've got that look." "What look?" "Like you're imagining something you're not supposed to." And I swear to God, I couldn't breathe for a full 5 seconds. The air between us was thick with something unspoken. Tense. Electric. I looked away first. "I should go," she said, standing up. But she didn't move. I wanted to kiss her. God help me, I wanted to. But I didn't. I watched her walk out the door, hips swaying, and wondered if she knew just how close I'd come. The next morning, she texted me. "Still thinking about it?" I didn't answer. I didn't have to, because we both knew the rules, and we were getting ready to break them. It was a warm Friday night in late spring, the kind of evening that hums with potential even when you're doing absolutely nothing. I was sitting alone at a family dinner hosted by my wife's parents. She had stepped out early, claimed she had to meet a colleague for drinks. No one asked questions. No one dared. So I stayed behind, trapped in polite conversation and refills of cheap wine, surrounded by in-laws who no longer felt like mine. Most of them didn't even notice her absence. Except one. Emily. She sat across from me, lips curled in a slight smile, toying with her wine glass like she was playing a game I hadn't agreed to but couldn't stop participating in. She had dressed up for the dinner, a black dress that clung in the right places and dropped a little lower at the neckline than necessary. Her dark hair framed her face in loose waves. I tried not to stare, but trying only made it worse. At one point, she leaned forward during a conversation, and her hand grazed mine under the table. It was brief, intentional, a tiny spark, but it felt like a current shot straight up my spine. Later that evening, I stepped out onto the porch for air. I was nursing the last sip of my wine when she followed. "Need a ride?" she asked casually, leaning against the porch rail beside me. "I Ubered here," I replied. She raised an eyebrow. "Wow, responsible and emotionally damaged. You're the full package." I laughed, despite myself. "You offering?" "Sure. My car's down the block." I hesitated. It felt dangerous. But staying there, sitting through small talk and dessert with people pretending everything was normal, felt worse. "All right," I said. "Let's go." We didn't talk much during the drive. The windows were down, and the breeze moved through her hair, bringing traces of whatever perfume she wore, warm, floral, intoxicating. Every now and then, she'd glance over at me. Her hand was on the gear shift, nails painted a deep red. I wondered if she knew how tense I was. When we pulled up in front of my house, she didn't immediately park. She just idled at the curb, fingers drumming softly against the steering wheel. "Well," I said, breaking the silence. "Thanks for the ride." She looked over, eyes unreadable in the soft dash light. "You look better lately," she said. "Better. More alive. A little less dead behind the eyes." "Thanks. That's comforting." She grinned. "I'm serious. I think the dating thing is working for you." I scoffed. "That's generous. Most of the time, I feel like I'm speed dating in purgatory." Emily leaned back in her seat, still watching me. "Maybe you're just not dating the right type." "And what type would that be?" She hesitated, just for a beat. Then she leaned in slightly. "Someone who actually knows what you've lost." The weight of that hung between us, thicker than silence, hotter than guilt. I looked away, then back at her. Our faces were close now. Too close. The kind of distance that begged to be closed all the way. I swallowed. "Emily." Her voice dropped. "Don't worry. I'm not going to kiss you." I let out a breath I didn't know I was holding. Disappointed. Relieved. Torn in half. She turned the car off and pulled the keys out of the ignition. Unless you asked me to. I didn't move. My heart was thudding in my ears. I didn't know what I wanted. No, I knew. I just didn't know if I had the guts to do it. She reached over, brushed a strand of hair behind my ear. The back of her fingers traced my jaw for just a moment. The lightest touch, but it felt like fire. You think I'm just messing with you, she whispered. But I'm not. Then what are you doing? Waiting for you to stop pretending you're okay. The quiet that followed felt louder than any scream. I reached for the door handle, needing to escape the heat rising inside me. As I opened the door, she said softly, "You ever need another ride? You call me. Doesn't matter when. Or why." I stepped out of the car into the warm night. The door clicked shut behind me, but I didn't move right away. My hands were trembling. I could still feel her eyes on me as she pulled away from the curb. Inside, the house was silent. My wife wasn't home yet. I walked into the kitchen and poured a drink I didn't need. Sat at the table and stared at the same spot where, weeks earlier, she had rewritten the rules of our marriage like she was rearranging furniture. Discreet. No drama. Don't let it affect us. What a joke. I thought of Emily's fingers brushing my skin. The way her eyes didn't look away when mine did. The heat. The temptation. The way she spoke like she saw me. Not the man I used to be, or the one I was pretending to be. Just me. And she liked what she saw. For the first time in weeks, I didn't feel invisible. I didn't feel like someone waiting on a call that never came. I didn't feel like the lesser half of someone else's fantasy. I felt wanted. That night, I dreamed of her. We were back in the car. She reached for my hand. I didn't stop her. Our mouths met in the dim glow of the dashboard, tongues brushing, breath mingling. She climbed onto my lap, grinding slowly, teasing. Her lips at my ear whispered things I can't even admit to myself when I'm awake. I woke up hard, sweating, alone, the house still dark, and that's when I knew something had changed. The game had started the moment my wife asked for an open marriage. But now I was finally ready to play. It started with a meme. A dumb one, really, a guy lying in bed, staring at his phone, with the caption, "She hasn't texted back. Time to spiral." Emily sent it at 11:48 p.m. on a Tuesday night. I was already in bed, phone on my chest, half asleep and fully defeated after another awkward, half-hearted coffee date that ended with a limp hug and a promise to stay in touch. I stared at the message, thumb hovering over the screen, unsure if replying meant something I wasn't ready to admit. I responded anyway. Sounds familiar. 3 dots appeared, then disappeared, then reappeared. Maybe you need a new texting buddy. Are you volunteering? Only if you promise not to fall in love with me. I stared at that reply for a while. I didn't know what game we were playing, but I knew I wasn't ready to lose. I'll do my best, but no promises. And just like that, we were texting. Every night. At first it was jokes, memes, harmless banter, but slowly, it began to shift. Her messages got longer, more vulnerable. She told me about her job stress, about a coworker who kept hitting on her and wouldn't take a hint. She told me about her loneliness, how she felt like the backup sister in every part of her life, the one people flirted with but never took seriously. I listened, really listened, because no one had been doing that for me, either. I told her about my failed dates. She laughed, teased me, but there was always something a little tender in her tone. A little more. She'd end the night with a good night message that lingered in my head until I fell asleep. And I started waiting for them. Every time my phone lit up, my chest did that involuntary flutter, the kind I hadn't felt in years, not even with my wife. Not even close. It was stupid, I told myself. Harmless. Just friendly. Just someone who made me feel like I mattered again. But then came the photos. Not nudes. Not at first. Just a selfie in her kitchen, hair messy, a tank top slipping off one shoulder. Looked like hell. Still better than your date from last night. Then one from bed, not in bed, not sexual, just her eyes peeking out from the covers with a smirk. You up? It was a picture meant to stir something. And it did. I stared at that image for a long time. Then I sent one back. Just me, lying on the couch, beer in hand, feet propped up, still awake. Don't judge the socks. Her response came fast. Nice legs. Surprised you hide them under all that dad energy. That night, I didn't sleep. My wife came home late. I heard her heels in the hall, the click of the bathroom door, the scent of unfamiliar cologne clinging to her clothes. She didn't say anything as she slid into bed beside me. And I didn't say anything either, because I was still thinking about Emily's photo. It got worse from there. Or better, depending on how you look at it. She started sending voice notes. Soft, low, like she was whispering directly into my ear. I'd play them over and over. The way her voice dipped when she said my name. The slight smile I could hear even when I couldn't see her face. One afternoon, I sent her a picture of the steak I'd grilled, proud of the sear, trying to pretend I still had normal hobbies. She replied with a photo of herself in a sundress. Not bad, but I think this deserves more attention. She knew what she was doing, and I loved every second of it. One night, I asked her flat out, "Why are you doing this?" She replied almost instantly, "Because I like you. And because you look at me like I'm more than just her sister." That stuck in my chest like a nail. Because it was true. I did see her, not as a surrogate, not as a forbidden fruit, but as someone who made me laugh, made me feel again, made me question how I'd let myself go numb for so long. She became the highlight of my day. A secret part of my life I didn't want to share with anyone, not even myself. I justified it by telling myself we hadn't crossed any lines. No kissing, no touching, just words. Just glances, just longing stretched tight like a rubber band. Then came the night I knew things would never be the same. She called me. I was in the backyard, sitting by the fire pit alone, drink in hand, the sky overhead bleeding into darkness. When her name lit up my phone, I hesitated, heart pounding. "Hey." I answered, trying to sound casual. "Hey." Her voice was warm. Familiar. Too familiar. "You okay?" She exhaled. "Not really. Had a shitty day? Mind if I come by?" I didn't even think before answering. Of course. 15 minutes later, she pulled up, wearing leggings and a hoodie, hair tied up, makeup smudged. She looked tired. Real. Beautiful in a way that felt completely unguarded. She sat next to me by the fire, not saying much at first. Just silence. Then she leaned into me. Her head found my shoulder. My arm found its way around her without permission. We sat like that for a while. The fire crackling, the world shrinking to the space between us. "I feel safe with you," she said quietly. I didn't know what to say, so I said nothing. But I didn't move. She tilted her head, looked up at me. "Can I ask you something?" she said. "Yeah. If I kissed you right now, would you stop me?" I didn't answer. That was an answer. She didn't kiss me. Not that night. She just nodded, stood up, and walked inside. She knew where the guest room was. She'd stayed there before. I listened to the soft click of the door behind her and stared at the fire until it burned down to glowing coals. I didn't go to her, but I wanted to. God, I wanted to. In that moment, I realized we were past the point of pretending. We weren't just flirting. We weren't just playing. We were holding our breath, waiting for the dam to break. And I had no idea who I'd be once it did. It was a Friday. One of those rare nights where the house didn't feel haunted by silence. My wife had left that afternoon, headed out for a weekend conference that we both silently agreed not to question. She packed a small overnight bag, kissed my cheek like we were polite coworkers, and left without looking back. I should have felt abandoned, but I didn't. I felt free. Emily texted me around 6. "You still alive over there?" "Barely. Got a fridge full of beer and no one to help me drink it." "Well, that's just tragic. Want company?" I stared at the message for a while. My thumb hovered, trembling slightly. We both knew what we were doing, and whatever pretense still existed was thinning by the second. "Yeah, come over." When she showed up an hour later, she was wearing jeans that fit like they'd been painted on and a simple white t-shirt that somehow made my throat dry up. Her hair was loose, a little windblown, and her eyes lit up the moment she saw me. "I brought tequila," she said, holding up a brown bag like she was delivering medicine. "That's dangerous," I replied, stepping aside. She walked in without hesitation. Comfortable, confident, like she already belonged. We sat on the couch, shots lined up between us, a stupid reality show playing in the background that neither of us paid attention to. The alcohol flowed fast. Too fast. Our knees brushed more often than they needed to. Her laughter rang louder than usual. And I didn't stop it. Not when she leaned in closer to show me something on her phone. Not when her hand rested casually on my thigh for just a beat too long. Not when she asked if I remembered that night in the car, the silence before I stepped out, the way I couldn't look at her without imagining what would happen if I kissed her. "I thought you were going to," she said, voice low, barely audible over the TV. "I wanted to," I admitted. "Why didn't you?" I didn't answer. I couldn't. The silence between us grew heavy. Electric. Her eyes searched mine, slow and deliberate, her breath catching just slightly as she leaned in closer. "Do you still want to?" she asked. I didn't hesitate. "Yes." She kissed me. It wasn't hesitant or testing. It wasn't a question. It was a crash, months of tension igniting in a single, breathless collision. Her hands slid into my hair, her body pressed against mine, lips warm and hungry and impossibly soft. I kissed her back, pulling her onto my lap like gravity itself demanded it. There was no room for guilt, no space for thought, only sensation. She moaned into my mouth, grinding her hips against me, fingers tugging at the hem of my shirt. We were already gone, a fire finally given oxygen. My hands slid under her shirt, palms exploring smooth skin, feeling the shiver ripple through her as my fingers found the clasp of her bra. She pulled away just long enough to pull the shirt over her head. "God," I muttered. "You're beautiful." Her smile was breathless. "Tell me again when I'm naked." We stumbled toward the bedroom, mouths locked, limbs tangled. Every second was frantic, every touch a desperate plea to make up for the months we had spent pretending this wasn't going to happen. When I finally had her beneath me, everything slowed. Her eyes locked with mine, lips parted, cheeks flushed. I hovered above her, trembling with the weight of what we were doing. "You sure?" I whispered. Her hands slid to my waist, pulled me down. I've never been more sure of anything. I kissed her again, slower this time. Reverent. Her body arched into mine, legs wrapping around me, drawing me in until there was no space left between us. We moved together like we had always known how, like our bodies had been waiting for this moment since the first time our eyes lingered too long. It wasn't just sex. It was release. It was rebellion. It was the quiet war inside, me finally finding a place to land. We didn't speak after. She lay on her side, tracing lazy circles on my chest, her leg hooked over mine. The room was filled with the soft hum of the ceiling fan and the lingering scent of her perfume, musky, warm, familiar now. "I didn't mean for this to happen," I said eventually, voice barely above a whisper. "Bullshit," she said, smirking into my neck. "We both meant for it to happen. We just finally let it." I didn't argue, because she was right. Still, something in me twisted. I thought about the rules, my wife's cold, clinical suggestions the night she pitched the open marriage. Keep it discreet. No drama. Don't let it affect us. She had no idea what she had started. Because this wasn't a fling. This wasn't some shallow, sexual rebellion. What I felt for Emily, the way she looked at me, the way she listened, the way her body responded to mine, it was real. And real was dangerous. "I'm not going to pretend this didn't happen," she said. "I don't regret it." "I don't either," I said. But that wasn't entirely true. Because I knew this wasn't just about sex. Not anymore. It was about choice. And for the first time, I wasn't sure if I wanted to keep choosing my wife. Emily fell asleep in my bed that night. Her body curled into mine like she belonged there. I watched her sleep, fingers brushing her bare shoulder, heart beating too fast to rest. I'd slipped. We'd crossed the line, and there was no going back. It didn't stop with one night. We could have blamed it on the tequila, the loneliness, the heat between us that had finally boiled over. But that would have been a lie, a convenient excuse for something we both knew was never going to be just once. Because once you taste something that real, you crave it. The next morning, I woke up with her head on my chest, her leg draped over mine, her skin warm and soft and tangled in the sheets we used to call our sheets, mine and my wife's. I should have felt ashamed. I should have been consumed by guilt. But I wasn't. I felt calm, like I'd come up for air after years of drowning in silence. She stirred and looked up at me with those sleepy eyes, her voice husky with morning. "So that happened." I smiled. "Yeah, it did." She bit her lip. "Still feel good about it?" "Better than I probably should." We didn't talk about what it meant. We didn't need to. That morning set the tone. Quiet, intimate, like a secret we'd both been aching to keep. She left before noon, throwing on her jeans and hoodie, hair tied back with her fingers. No lipstick. No makeup. Just real. Beautiful in that effortless way that made my chest tighten. As she reached the door, I stopped her. "Emily." She turned. "I don't want to pretend this didn't happen." Her face softened, and she gave me that look, the one I'd started living for. "Good," she said. "Because I was never good at pretending. That should have been the end of it. A line drawn. One night. Move on." But I texted her the next day. She replied immediately. We met up that Friday. Then again the following Tuesday. Then Saturday. We started choosing places that were further out, a hotel outside the city, an Airbnb under a different name, always private, always secret. It wasn't just about sex anymore. Though the sex was, God, it was something else. There was a desperation in the way we touched each other. A hunger. Like we were trying to undo years of being unseen. She wanted to be worshipped. I wanted to be needed. And together, we made each other feel alive. The first time I saw her undress in daylight, I just stood there, watching. She smirked, not shy at all. What? You? I forgot what it felt like to want someone this much. She walked to me, bare feet on the wood floor, completely naked. She stopped inches away, put her hands on my chest, and whispered, "Then don't forget again." I didn't. But hiding it wasn't easy. At home, my wife noticed the change. I thought I was being subtle, careful, but she saw it. Maybe not the affair, but something. She noticed how I shaved more often, how I checked my phone more, how I smiled at things I didn't explain. Her eyes lingered on me longer at dinner, suspicious, studying. But she never said anything outright. Not until the night I came home late. "Where were you?" she asked, standing by the door, arms crossed. "Out. Just drinks after work." "With who?" "A client." Her head tilted slightly. "You're not a good liar, you know." I met her gaze. "Do I need to lie?" She didn't answer, just stared at me, something breaking in her eyes. "You're sleeping with someone, aren't you?" The air tightened. I didn't say yes. I didn't say no. And that silence said everything. She didn't press, just turned around, walked to the kitchen, poured herself a drink, and sipped it like she was trying to swallow the truth without choking. That night, she didn't come to bed. I lay there alone, staring at the ceiling, wondering when the shift had happened, when I had stopped being the man she needed and started being the man who needed someone else just to feel human again. Emily, meanwhile, was texting me from her apartment. "Miss me yet?" "Always." "You free tomorrow?" I typed yes and stared at the blinking cursor before sending it. It was becoming a routine. Dangerous. Addictive. We met again at a beachside motel the next afternoon. Middle of the day. Windows cracked open, sunlight pouring over her skin as I moved over her. Inside her, both of us forgetting, or maybe just ignoring, what it meant. Afterward, she lay on her stomach, her hair messy, sheets tangled around her hips, bare back glowing in the light. She looked over her shoulder at me and said, "I know this isn't just sex for you." I didn't answer right away, because I didn't want to lie. "No," I said eventually. "It's not." She reached for my hand. Same. That word. Same. It hit harder than I expected. This wasn't casual. It wasn't a rebellion anymore. It was intimacy, connection, emotional gravity pulling us into something we weren't ready to admit. Not to ourselves, and definitely not to the world. But the world was starting to notice. My wife wasn't the only one watching more closely. Her mother asked why Emily seemed happier lately. Her friends teased her about finally glowing again. Her sister, my wife, grew colder, more guarded. We'd sit in the same room and barely make eye contact. One night, she looked up from her phone and said, "You've changed." "How so?" "You laugh more. You're more confident." I said nothing. "You're seeing someone, aren't you?" I didn't flinch. "You wanted this," I said. "Remember? The rules?" She stood up. "I didn't think you'd enjoy it this much." I wanted to scream, neither did I. Instead, I just walked past her, grabbed a beer from the fridge, and stood at the kitchen counter while she went upstairs without another word. That night, Emily sent me a voice message. Just 4 words. "I can't stop thinking." I played it 5 times, then replied, "Me neither." I didn't know where this was heading. I only knew it wasn't stopping. Not now. Not after everything we'd crossed to get here. The first time my wife asked about Emily, she did it with a smile. It was a Monday evening. She was seated at the kitchen counter, sipping wine in yoga pants and an oversized sweater, acting like we were still just a regular couple doing regular things. I was cleaning up dinner. She'd ordered takeout, of course, and the kitchen smelled like curry and passive aggression. "So," she said casually, "Emily's been around a lot lately." My hand froze halfway to the sink. "What?" She raised an eyebrow. "Just saying. She's dropped by like, what, 3 times this week?" "Twice," I said too quickly. "She had some stuff she left in the garage. Just picked it up." She sipped. "You two always this close." I turned off the faucet, dried my hands. Try to act cool. She's your sister. That doesn't really answer the question. There was no real accusation in her voice. Not yet. Just curiosity. The kind that cuts a little deeper than it lets on. I shrugged. We've been talking more. That's not weird, is it? It is, she said. But she was still smiling. And that smile. I hated it. That tight-lipped, performative grin that told me she knew something I didn't know she knew. After that, she watched me differently. She started noticing things. The way I'd glance at my phone and try to hide the smile. How quickly I answered texts, only to turn the screen away when she walked past. The way I sometimes left the room just to take a call in private. She stopped asking directly. But the tension became a third presence in the house. And Emily? She noticed too. You're quieter lately, she texted one night. She's on edge. I think she suspects something. Emily didn't reply right away. Then, maybe it's time she did. That scared me more than I expected. Because I still wasn't ready to admit what this had become. I wasn't sure I could. But my body? My body had already chosen. Every time I saw Emily, I was drawn to her. Not just her body. Though, God, she was magnetic, but her energy. The way she laughed, cursed, challenged me, looked at me like I was hers. Every touch felt like it meant something. And maybe that was the scariest part. One night, we were tangled together in bed, her head resting on my chest, both of us too breathless to speak. You ever think about what we're doing? She asked quietly. All the time. And, I don't know, I whispered. I just know I don't want it to stop. She didn't say anything after that. Just held me tighter. But the world doesn't like secrets. Not for long. It was a Saturday when everything started unraveling. Emily had come over that morning, said she needed a break from her apartment. My wife was supposedly at brunch. We didn't plan for anything to happen. We never planned. But the moment she walked through the door, her lips were on mine, her body pressed against me, and we were kissing like we hadn't touched in weeks. She moaned into my mouth as I lifted her onto the kitchen counter, our clothes a careless afterthought. We didn't even make it to the bedroom. Later, as we lay half-dressed on the couch, she laughed softly and said, "We're not even being careful anymore." "Are we supposed to be?" I asked. She just looked at me with that same soft, unreadable expression, like she already knew the answer. Then we heard the front door open. Panic doesn't feel like it does in movies. There's no slow motion, no dramatic score. It's raw, immediate. It sinks its claws into your spine and shoves you off a cliff before you can even think. Emily jumped up, scrambling for her clothes. I grabbed my shirt off the floor, heart pounding. Too late. My wife stood in the doorway, her keys still in hand, a grocery bag dangling from her wrist. Her eyes moved from me, to the couch, to the shoes by the door that weren't hers. Then Emily stepped out from the hallway, fully dressed, but unmistakably flustered. Hair messy, lips slightly swollen, guilt dripping from every inch of her. There was a pause, silence like a gunshot. Then my wife laughed. A short, humorless sound that cracked in the air like ice breaking. "Well," she said. I knew something was going on. I opened my mouth, but no words came out. Emily stepped forward, voice shaking. "I didn't mean." "Don't," my wife said, holding up a hand. Her face was unreadable now. Cold. Calculating. "Don't insult me with apologies." She turned to me. "You could have slept with anyone. But you chose her." I wanted to speak, to explain, defend something. But what was there to say? That she asked for this? That the open marriage was her idea? That might have been true, but this wasn't about rules anymore. It was about betrayal. "You broke it," she said. Her voice cracked then, just slightly. I thought I didn't care anymore. But seeing this? Seeing you too? She shook her head. "I don't even recognize you." She dropped the grocery bag. Apples rolled across the floor. Then she walked out. The silence afterward was unbearable. Emily sat beside me, her face pale, hands in her lap. "She's going to hate me forever," she whispered. "She already does," I said. She just didn't know why. We sat like that for a long time, both of us too stunned to move. Later that night, I poured myself a drink and stared out the window, wondering if this was the moment everything truly broke. If there was any way back from here, any repair possible. And deep down, I knew the answer. No, this wasn't a stumble anymore. This was a fall, and we were already too far down. I didn't hear from her for 3 days. My wife, I mean. Not a word. No calls, no texts. Her clothes were still in the closet, her toothbrush still by the sink. But the silence wrapped around the house like smoke. Heavy. Suffocating. Emily stayed away. She didn't have to be told. The last time we spoke, her voice was tight and small. I shouldn't have come over, she'd said. But we both knew that wasn't true. We had passed the point of shouldn't a long time ago. The quiet in the house wasn't peaceful anymore. It was charged. Every time I opened a door, I expected her to be standing there, seething. Instead, nothing. Just the low hum of appliances and the echo of my own thoughts. On the fourth day, she came home. It was almost midnight. I was sitting in the kitchen, still dressed from work, a half-drunk whiskey sweating in my hand. I heard the door open, soft footfalls across the hardwood, then the faint rustle of her coat sliding off. I didn't move. She walked into the kitchen like a storm brewing on the horizon. Her eyes were puffy, makeup smeared like she'd wiped it with the back of her hand hours ago. She looked exhausted, but determined. "We're talking," she said, her voice sharp, cutting through the silence like a blade. "Okay." She didn't sit. She stood across from me, arms folded tightly over her chest like she was holding herself together by force. "How long has it been going on?" I knew better than to lie. "Couple months." "With her?" "Yes." She flinched like I'd struck her. "Jesus, you didn't even hesitate. No point pretending now." She paced once, then stopped, gripping the edge of the kitchen island. "I gave you freedom," she said, eyes burning. "I gave you space. I trusted you." I laughed, bitter and low. "You gave me rules. Not trust. You wanted to keep me close while you went off doing whatever you wanted. Don't turn this on me. I'm not. I'm just saying, you don't get to act shocked. You wanted an open marriage. I didn't. Not with her. Not with my sister. What the hell were you thinking?" "I wasn't," I said. "Not at first. That was the truth. It hadn't started as a plan. It had started with glances, texts, subtle touches. All the things we'd stopped doing with each other long ago." Her expression twisted with rage. "So what? You just fell into her. You tripped and your dick landed inside her." "Don't," I said, voice hardening. "You wanted honesty. I'm giving it to you. Don't make this ugly." She slammed her palm on the counter. "It's already ugly. You cheated on me with someone I trusted. She's my sister." I stood now too. The chair screeched across the floor. "You cheated first. You just had the decency to call it a trial run. Don't stand there and act like you're some victim. I never lied to you. No, you just invited me to watch you fall out of love with me. One rule at a time." Her eyes narrowed. "Are you in love with her?" The words hung in the air like smoke. Heavy. Toxic. I didn't answer. That silence was worse than a confession. Her mouth opened, then closed. She looked at me like she didn't recognize me anymore. "I gave you everything," she whispered. "I gave you a way to stay." "No," I said. "You gave me a way to leave without packing a bag." The silence that followed was unbearable. Finally, she turned her back to me, pressing her hands to the counter, shoulders shaking. "I hate you," she said. "I hate you for making me care again. You stopped caring a long time ago." She turned, eyes shining with tears. "And you chose her? Out of everyone. You couldn't even fuck someone forgettable. You had to destroy the whole damn family." "I didn't plan it," I said. "But you let it happen," she snapped. "You wanted it to happen. Don't pretend otherwise." I swallowed. She saw me. She froze. "What?" "She saw me," I said again, quieter this time. "For who I was. Not who I used to be. Not who she wanted me to become. Just me." She looked stunned for a moment. Hurt. And then something broke. A laugh, sharp and bitter, ripped from her throat. "That's so fucking pathetic." I didn't respond. She turned to leave, then hesitated in the doorway. "You think this ends with her?" she asked. "You think this turns into something real?" "I don't know," I said. "But I know what we have is already dead." The door closed behind her, not with a slam, but with finality. A slow, soft end to a war that had been waged in whispers and glances and unsaid things for years. I stood there in the kitchen, the lights dim, the air heavy with everything we hadn't said soon enough. Later that night, I called Emily. She answered after the first ring. "Hey," she said softly. "Are you okay?" "No," I said. "But I think I will be." She was quiet for a long time. Then, "She knows now." "Yeah." "What did she say?" "Everything she needed to. Everything I deserved." Another pause. Then, "Do you regret it?" I looked around the empty house, the silence no longer suffocating but strangely clean. "No," I said. "I don't." Because the truth was, for all the pain, the wreckage, the betrayal. Something inside me had come back to life. Something I thought had died years ago. A flicker of clarity, of raw truth, of finally standing in the middle of the storm and not turning away. There was no going back. Only through. You think you're prepared for the fallout. You rehearse it in your head. What people will say, how they'll look at you, what explanations you'll give that sound just reasonable enough to excuse the unthinkable. You tell yourself that if you can just make them understand the why, maybe they won't hate you so much for the what. But you're never prepared. The family dinner was a disaster before the first plate hit the table. It had been a week since the confrontation. My wife hadn't come home since that night, though she still texted me, always cold and clipped. You'll need to sign the refinancing documents. I'm not covering that alone anymore. Not a word about us. No mention of what we'd been. Just logistics. Numbers. Now, we were seated across from each other at her parents' house. A long oak dining table that had once held birthdays, holidays, anniversaries, now holding tension like a live wire stretched between forks and platters of roast chicken. Emily was there too. She hadn't wanted to come. This is asking for a bloodbath, she said when I picked her up. I know, but hiding won't fix it. She wore a black blouse, plain and modest, no makeup, hair tied back. She didn't want to be seen, but she was impossible not to look at. The weight of what we were sat on her shoulders like armor, and she wore it better than I did. Her sister, my wife, barely looked at her. Dinner started with fake smiles. Polite questions. My mother-in-law asking about my job like nothing had happened. My father-in-law staring at his plate like it might answer the questions no one dared speak aloud. Then the wine kicked in. So, my wife said, voice too bright, how long have you two been screwing behind my back? Silence. My mother-in-law dropped her fork. Sweetheart. No, Mom. Let's not pretend anymore. Let's all just sit here in the open, where apparently everyone else was living except me. Her eyes burned holes through both of us. Emily went pale. I didn't move. I should have known, she went on, eyes now locked on her sister. You were always the second choice. Always the backup plan. You couldn't stand it. So you stole the one thing I had that you didn't. I didn't steal anything, Emily said, voice trembling. You gave him away a long time ago. My wife laughed. Oh, right. So this is my fault. I let you have a taste, and now you think you're the main course. Stop, I said, but they both ignored me. You never even looked at him the way I did, Emily said. He was just there, like furniture, something to come home to after someone else made you feel alive. And what? You're his savior now? She snapped. You think what you have is love? It's desperation. It's two broken people clinging to each other because they couldn't fix the people they were actually married to. Enough, I said again, louder this time. My father-in-law stood suddenly, grabbing his plate and walking out of the room. My mother-in-law followed him, muttering something about not doing this here, but no one stopped us. I didn't want this to happen, I said. But it did. And it's real. You don't even know what real is anymore, she said, her voice breaking. You just needed someone to blame for the fact that you stopped trying. I stood slowly. My hands were shaking. I'm not blaming anyone. I'm choosing. She laughed, wiped a tear from the corner of her eye. Oh, is that what this is? A choice? And let me guess, you're picking her. I didn't answer. That silence was enough. You're pathetic, she said. No, Emily said, standing too. He's honest. For the first time in years. My wife turned to her. You don't get to speak for him. Then let him speak, Emily said, voice steady now. Tell her. I looked at both of them. Two women who once shared bunk beds and birthday parties, now standing like strangers across the battlefield that was our broken marriage. And I said it. I love her. My wife flinched. Emily didn't move. But I saw it in her eyes, something unspoken and unbearable. The mix of relief and guilt and fear. Because now it was real. Not a secret. Not an affair. A choice. A declaration. The triangle had been drawn in blood. My wife didn't speak. She just turned and walked out. I thought Emily might follow her. Try to fix what couldn't be fixed. But she didn't. She sat back down, hands trembling, her breath shallow. You meant that? She asked. I nodded. Yeah, I did. She reached for my hand. Held it tight. I don't want to hide anymore, she whispered. You won't have to. But even as I said it, I knew the path forward wouldn't be clean. It wouldn't be easy. We'd hurt people. Badly. And there'd be no undoing what had already been done. We didn't finish dinner. We left before dessert. My mother-in-law's face was pale and unreadable as she hugged us goodbye. No one else said a word. In the car, Emily sat in silence, watching the trees blur past the window. "You okay?" I asked. She turned to me. "No, but I believe you." And that was the beginning of something neither of us could take back. I knew it was a mistake the moment I walked through the door. Another family gathering, this time for my father-in-law's birthday. He was turning 60, and the idea was to keep things civil, a phrase tossed around by my mother-in-law like a bandage over a bullet wound. But nothing was civil anymore. Not after what I said. Not after what I chose. We arrived together, Emily and me. No more sneaking. No more side doors or separate cars. The tension hit us like a wave before we even stepped inside. The kind of silence that chokes. That doesn't need words to make its point. My wife, soon-to-be ex, though we hadn't said it out loud yet, stood near the bar with a glass of white wine. She saw us and didn't flinch. Just watched with those glassy, unreadable eyes that had once softened at my touch. That time felt like another life. "Happy birthday," I muttered to her father as we hugged. He gave me a stiff nod and said, "Thank you," like he wasn't sure if he meant it. He didn't look me in the eye. No one really did. Emily stood beside me like a lighthouse in a storm. Strong. Still. But I could feel the storm beneath her skin. Dinner was a minefield. The seating arrangement was a cruel joke, Emily and I directly across from my wife. She hadn't said a word to us yet. Her fork clicked softly against her plate as she cut into her food like she was carving away pieces of a memory she wanted to forget. Halfway through the main course, the silence shattered. "So," my wife said, setting her fork down and dabbing her lips like a woman in full control, "are we all just going to pretend this is normal now?" The table froze. My mother-in-law gave her a warning look. "Not here. Not tonight." "No," she said, voice calm but razor sharp. "Let's do it tonight. Let's stop pretending we're all okay with this." She looked directly at me. "You humiliated me. I never meant to." "Don't," she snapped, eyes flashing. "Don't give me that voice." The calm, wounded one. I didn't mean to hurt you voice. You meant it. Every bit of it. You meant to burn it all down." Emily placed a hand on my leg under the table. I could feel her shaking. My wife turned to her next. "And you're not some innocent little girl in this. You knew exactly what you were doing. Always looking for the scraps off my plate." Emily's breath caught. "You really think that's what this is? That's all you've ever been," she spat. "The second-place trophy who wanted a taste of what it felt like to be first." "I didn't steal him," Emily said, her voice trembling but firm. "You lost him." The whole table held its breath. "You were never there," Emily continued, standing now, her voice rising. "You treated him like furniture. You mocked him, dismissed him, and when he finally stopped chasing your approval, you got angry. You called it betrayal, but you broke this marriage before I ever touched him." "Sit down," my mother-in-law whispered sharply, but no one moved. My wife laughed, but it was hollow. "You think this will last? You think he'll be different with you? He's already cheated once. He'll do it again." "I didn't cheat," I said suddenly. "Not the way you think." She turned to me, sneering. "Oh, please. You fucked my sister in our bed. And you were fucking strangers in hotels." That shut the table up. Her father dropped his fork. Someone gasped. "This open marriage wasn't my idea," I said, standing. "You came to me. You said you wanted freedom. No drama. No mess. And now that you don't like the way it turned out, you're acting like I'm the villain." Her eyes shimmered, but her voice was steel. "You broke the rule." "No," I said, quieter now. "I broke the spell. The one that made me think I had to beg for your attention. The one that convinced me I was only valuable when you needed something." Emily stood beside me, chin high. "I love him," she said. "And you expect me to just accept that?" my wife asked. "To bless it?" "No," Emily replied. "I expect you to let go." For a moment, no one spoke. Then my wife laughed again, louder, wilder this time. Her eyes were wide, almost unhinged. "You know what?" she said, grabbing her wine and raising the glass. "To betrayal. To family. To fucking your way through grief." She drank the entire glass in one gulp, then smashed it in the sink behind her. Glass exploded. Someone screamed. Her father stood to grab her, but she pushed him off and stormed out. The door slammed so hard the frame shook. And that was it. The breaking point. No more denial. No more pretending we could share the same space without tearing each other apart. Emily and I stood in the aftermath like we were the only ones still breathing in a room of ghosts. Her hands were clenched at her sides. Mine were shaking. My mother-in-law approached us slowly, her face unreadable. "I don't know if I'll ever forgive either of you," she said. "But she's not blameless either." We nodded. There was nothing to say. She walked away, and the room slowly began to breathe again. Guests filtering out in murmured clusters, avoiding eye contact, pretending the walls hadn't just bled truth from every pore. In the car, we didn't speak for a long time. Then Emily whispered, "I didn't want it to happen like this." "Me neither," I said. "But we're out now," she said. "Yeah," I replied. "We are." And that was a dangerous place to be. No hiding. No pretending. Only what was left. Each other. People think when a storm ends, everything goes quiet. That peace just arrives. But the truth is, after the screaming stops, after the doors slam and the lies bleed out, the silence that follows isn't calm. It's deafening. The weeks after the dinner implosion were a blur of paperwork, text messages that ended mid-sentence, and conversations that sounded more like negotiations than goodbyes. My wife filed first. She didn't ask for mediation, didn't ask to talk it through. She sent me the documents like she was canceling a subscription. No apology. No final confrontation. Just sign. Return. She didn't want the house. Said it was tainted. She moved into a condo downtown with floor-to-ceiling windows and a view that probably made her feel above it all. I didn't ask if she was seeing someone. I didn't care anymore, and not out of spite. I had simply stopped needing to know. I stayed. Emily moved in a week after the papers were signed. It felt surreal at first, her toothbrush beside mine, her coat on the same hook that used to hold her sister's. The same bed, same sheets, but everything felt new. I didn't expect it to feel like healing, but it did. The guilt never fully disappeared. It still came in waves, especially late at night when I caught myself thinking, "You destroyed a family." But then I'd look over and see Emily asleep beside me, her face soft, her breathing steady, her hand reaching for mine even in sleep. And I'd remember the difference between comfort and connection. I had lived in comfort for a long time. But this was something else. One afternoon, I came home to find Emily in the kitchen, barefoot, music playing low. She was making pasta, singing along to something old and soft. I leaned against the doorframe and just watched her for a minute. She noticed, turned, and grinned. "What?" "Nothing," I said. "Just this feels like life again." She wiped her hands on a towel. "You sure it's not just the wine?" "I'm sure." She walked to me and wrapped her arms around my waist. "You ever think about how crazy this all was?" "Every day. And you still think we did the right thing?" I paused. Not because I wasn't sure, but because I wanted to answer honestly. "I think we did the real thing," I said. "And sometimes the real thing is messy. Sometimes it costs everything." Her eyes searched mine, and I saw the weight she still carried. No matter how much we tried to move forward, the scar of what we did would always be there, not just for us, but for everyone connected to us. Her parents hadn't spoken to her in weeks. Her sister blocked her on everything. Holidays were going to be brutal, if they even existed for us anymore. We'd become that couple, the whispered about, the scandal no one fully forgave. But we were also finally living in truth. I reached up and brushed a stray hair from her cheek. "I don't know how this ends," I admitted. "But I know how it begins." She smiled. "How?" "Like this." And then I kissed her. Not out of lust, or apology, or desperation, but love. Quiet, certain, earned love. We had paid for it in full, with pain, regret, and risk. And somehow, that made it feel realer than anything I'd ever known. The world didn't understand it. Maybe it never would. Her mother called one evening. Left a voicemail. "I don't approve," she said. "But I understand. Sometimes things rot before anyone notices. And by the time the smell becomes unbearable, everyone's already sick." That was her way of saying she was coming around. That maybe, in time, others would too. But even if they didn't, we had each other. Emily found work at a local nonprofit. I started painting again, something I hadn't touched since college. Life became smaller but fuller, more intentional, more hours. Every now and then, I get a message from someone who used to know us as that couple. Married 10 years. No kids. Looked perfect on the outside. Never saw that coming. One friend texted. "I did," I replied. Because perfect was never the point. We spent years maintaining the image, the performance, the mutual silence. But silence isn't peace. And appearances aren't love. Love is what Emily gave me when she saw through all of that. When she saw the lonely man behind the loyal mask. When she didn't flinch from the mess, she joined me in it. That's what the rebound became. Not a mistake. Not a distraction. But the start of a life no longer lived in shadows. I once told myself I was too afraid to lose her, my wife, so I agreed to the open marriage. I let fear steer the wheel. And that fear cost me years. Cost me joy. Cost me truth. But losing her wasn't what broke me. Lying to myself was. And loving Emily? That was the first honest thing I'd done in a long time. Final reflection. If you're still reading this, if you're sitting in the thick of your own mess, weighing choices you're scared to say out loud, here's what I'll leave you with. Don't confuse survival with happiness. Don't confuse loyalty with love. You can die slowly with someone and still call it a marriage. You can be faithful to a lie and think you're noble. But when someone sees you, truly sees the ache behind your eyes, don't run from it. Because the rebound might not be a rebound at all. It might be the person who finally hands you the mirror you've been too afraid to look into. And if that happens, don't look away.